So when doing nothing feels actually safer than making the wrong decision. We've all been there, right? Well, I absolutely have. This is the topic of today's podcast that I want to talk to you guys about. So I think we've all noticed the times when doing nothing feels absolutely safer than making the wrong decision. It's a powerful thought, but a little bit overwhelming, if I'm being honest, because I think as small business owners, it's the crazy part of our brain that we sort of keep alive when we often convince ourselves that we are still thinking about doing it, but we're actually just really stuck. And that's the power of what I want to talk about today. So, welcome back, everybody, to Freedom from the Desk. I'm Nicola. So, previously, I did a podcast with a guest speaker of mine who's actually my coach, my personal coach, Peter Chant. And he is obviously a leadership coach that I've worked closely with together. And what I'll do is I'll link in the video here the podcast that we did with Pete, where he unpacked a concept around time, attention, and growth. But after that conversation, something that really stood out to me was the concept that it's not always time that's actually holding us back, and it's not even really sometimes even our capability, because we're all amazingly capable people. It's sometimes the actual weight of the decision that we're making or not making, as it is, ourself. And honestly, hand on heart, I see this everywhere. I see it in business. I see it in health, in my own health journey. I see it when it comes to our mindset. And it just creeps into our everyday life. So I thought it was really good to actually unpack this concept a little bit after this podcast that I had with Pete, because it sort of really shined a light on what we actually have here. So we get overwhelmed really easily nowadays because we've got information overload on our social media. We've got every person giving an opinion, and we've got like choices up the wazoo. It's as simple as that. And the reality is that eventually doing nothing actually starts to feel safer than actually choosing. And we see this a lot in the online world as well. So let's talk about what this actually is. You guys may have heard things like analysis paralysis, decision paralysis, just general overwhelm. Probably one that you don't hear about so much nowadays is obviously burnout. That's a little bit different, but similar as well. So I want to talk to you, just have a conversation with you guys about this today. And like I said, you've probably heard terms like analysis paralysis before. But what does it actually mean? So simply put, the best way I can put it is, at its core, analysis paralysis is, it's really just the fear of getting it wrong. And I'm 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 right in this camp. Okay? When we don't decide, we actually avoid the risk. So that's a little bit of human nature. We're protecting ourselves. When we don't decide, we avoid the risk, we avoid the responsibility, and of course we avoid the discomfort that may come with making that decision. But what we also do is we actually avoid the growth in ourselves. So this is why so many entrepreneurs, so many people that are wanting to chase this dream, whether it's working in the online space, whether it's building a business, we also avoid growth, we avoid momentum, and we avoid the clarity for ourselves. So why does this land so passionately with business owners or small business owners? For me, this is who I want to speak to, because it's just it's just something that we struggle with every day, and it's probably not talked about enough. And again, I'll speak from this from my perspective. As sole traders, we wear a lot of hats. We we do, like, we're the marketer, we're the coffee maker, we're the cleaner, we're the person that goes down to the post office, we're the person that goes and does the banking. We're the person that pays the bills. We're the person that pays the wages. We're the person that sorts out all the administration. So there's a lot of hats that go on. No matter what the structure or the size of your business, those multiple hats just put a lot of pressure, put a lot of pressure on us to do what we are supposed to be achieving. And that causes a little bit of decision fatigue, and we play into the fear of wasting a lot of time, effort, and money, right? So the easiest way to explain this, I suppose, why it weighs so heavily on our mind as small business owners, is when you work for someone else, like when you're a paid employee, mistakes that you make don't seem as heavy, because essentially while they're owned by you, there's an element that the responsibility or a mistake or something happens, it's owned by the business owner and not so much for you. But when you work for yourself, every decision that you make, every little micro decision that you make feels immensely personal, right? And that's, I think, where the power is because when we have that responsibility to make all those decisions, even those little micro decisions, they compound, they build. You know, it's like, oh, I've got to organize my insurance today. Oh, I've got to create a template today. Oh, I've got to go and spend an hour with AI and get all my content sorted. Or I've got to get some YouTube ideas. Or I've got to build my audience. I've got to create some content for my group. The overwhelm is really real. It's as simple as that. And some examples are, for us that we do is things like we're choosing a coach, we're creating or changing systems, we're investing in our health and our wellness, marketing decisions, and it's it's hard. It's a lot. So what I want to touch on now is a bit more around sort of the emotional center, for want of a better term. So the safe mode trap, as I like to call it. So doing nothing can feel really productive because we're still researching, we're still thinking, we're still consuming information. So we actually feel we're telling ourselves that we're actually doing something. But again, in essence, thinking is not actually creating movement. So I love a little analogy for you guys to unpack to make this sort of more digestible in case me sharing this is, not coming across quite as clear as it could be. Because I know I'm really passionate about this stuff, but sometimes getting it across is really, really hard. So if we look at an analogy, if you're sitting in a parked car with the engine running, you're planning the route. The expectation is there that you're actually going to do something. You're adjusting the mirrors, you're putting the seatbelt on, you're checking the maps, and you're looking at the weather to see what the road conditions are like. So you're doing all the prep work, but you're actually never driving anywhere. You're actually never doing anything. So all that stuff, all that planning that we're doing is actually avoiding the task. So that's just a little simple analogy to sort of unpack that a little bit. So practical takeaways for you guys. I love sharing something that actually you can actually try, do, actually step forward, because the reality is that this part happens, this part actually really matters a lot, and a lot of people don't share sort of tangible things that you can actually take hold of and actually try yourself. So I want to be able to give you some practical steps. I want to be able to give you permission to give it a red hot go. So the first thing I can suggest is make smaller decisions. When you are making decisions around things like, let's just say, for example, you've got to review your say insurances for your businesses. And because I have a service business and because I work in the online space, of course, public liability insurance for me is probably quite paramount. And I think it's easy to think that that's an easy decision. And it kind of is. But when you make an easy decision a lot smaller, so when you break it down into actually what you've got to do. So let's just say you've got a broker that you work with, or maybe you're doing the research yourself. Break down the decision that you're making. So using insurance as an example, we would look at scheduling it in at a certain time of the day. So let's just say you don't work on you've got admin for your business, say on Monday morning. So block out a time, block out an hour or 2 hours of time to go away, make some phone calls, get some quotes online, look at the numbers and actually dissect it a little bit rather than just going, oh, yeah, I'm going to go and get my insurance. And then it turns into something more difficult than it needs to be. When you actually reverse engineer the process backwards, the smaller decisions become more achievable. And every decision doesn't need to be permanent, right? Most of your decisions are adjustable, but give that adjustable time and that adjustable decision somewhere to live, somewhere to hang out. So schedule a time in for that thing. So reduce the information you actually intake because that's number two. Reduce the information you actually intake because input in our lives as small business owners creates a lot of noise, in our head, right? And at some point, a lot more information actually begins to create a hindrance, not a help. And number three, ask for help. Ask. What is the next smallest step you can do for yourself? So if you're struggling with something, or if you find that you have something on your list that you're not tackling, so maybe I've got something on my to-do list or my task list that constantly just stays there, and it just moves down the pile and never gets done. Ask yourself, what is it that needs to be broken down, that needs to be made smaller within that thing, within that task, that's actually going to make it happen, make it start. So you don't want this perfect executed plan of the whole outcome from woe to go, because that's normally where we come unstuck, right? You just need to make the next move, like in a game of chess. You're making that next move because it's compounding towards the end game, right? So I hope this makes sense for you. So build your evidence through your action. So our confidence actually comes after we start. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow, right? Because I think we think that we're just going to come in all guns blazing and we're going to have the confidence actually before we start. But it actually comes afterwards. It feeds into our confidence the more we actually move. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Now, the thing I want to talk about next is the next episode I'm going to be talking about, and I don't really want to unpack it too much yet, but it's a thing called self-affirmation. And I'm going to be talking about this in my next episode, which is going to be landing next week. Now, this is a really fun way to give you a tool that you can use when you are struggling to sort of get these things out onto paper. This is one of the biggest things that I struggle with. And this is why I started working with a coach, is because I'm a great finisher, but I'm not a great starter. So the inner dialogue, the little demons that run around in our head and the imposter syndrome really come out to play when I'm trying to execute a lot of things, and particularly a lot of new things will start to move towards a goal. And this self-affirmation tool that I've come across that I actually learnt about through a book that I've just finished called The Expectation Effect is a really powerful and super easy tool that we can hold in our arsenal as small business owners. So that really naturally leads me out of today's episode. And I think it's going to be a powerful stepping stone from today. So first of all, I encourage you to go listen to the episode with me and Pete talking through that one. And again, I will link that in the comments below. And I will also obviously try and link it here on the screen. But I think that conversation with Pete then obviously leads us into today about, this paralysis analysis, or this decision making non-zone that we can get stuck in, that I wanted to unpack a little bit more, is that the more I sort of looked into it, the more powerful it can be when we actually feel stuck, uncertain, or overwhelmed. And I think that tool that I want to talk about next week of, that self affirmation. And I want to rest assured that it's not any flary woo woo, manifesting something into life. This is actually a really nice, tangible tool that you'll actually be able to use to help you when you're moving through these processes every day. I look forward to catching you guys in next week's episode. And I hope this one resonated with you today and that it leads in from Pete and I's podcast that we did. I would love to hear your feedback on that and how, and if you suffer from this sort of decision paralysis that we all seem to navigate when we're in business. And yeah, I would love your feedback. And maybe it's simply just giving yourself permission to start and permission to say, yeah, I'm okay. And I am actually stuck, but I'm going to move forward. So I'm going to sign off. Until next time, have a fantastic day.